Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the Cohoes City School District Board of Education regular meeting on January 8th. Meeting is being called to order at 6:01 p.m. Emergency exits, 2 on this side, and the one that we came in, we would meet out front. Could I please have everyone stand for the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You have a roll call, please.
Mrs. Geller?
Here.
Mr. Jackson?
Here.
Mrs. Snyder?
Here.
Mrs. Gendron?
Here.
Meredith? Here. And Mr. Droz?
Here.
At this time, we're going to take a brief interlude and have a presentation from some of our friends at the middle school. So we would like to welcome them at this time.
Good evening, everyone. That's a long time. Happy New Year's. I have the privilege and honor to not every single one, that would be, but this is the cast of the SpongeBob musical by Nickelodeon. This will be presented live this Friday, Saturday at 7 o'clock, Sunday at 2. But I couldn't change that. Sold it. I've heard a little of what they've done, some high school sneaking in, some stuff. I'm looking so forward to seeing this live. So to the performers, I'm so very proud of you for all that you're doing, what you do. You're going to do a great job. But at this time, I would like to introduce Mr. Kinga.
Hi. Thank you all for having us again. I'm really excited to be bringing the cast of SpongeBob to talk with us today. They have been working exceptionally hard this year. The show is, I don't think I am guessing, exaggerating, or placing any bets to say that this is going to be the best show that the Junior Drum program has ever put on. They are in an absolutely spectacular place. I've been telling them routinely throughout the year that throughout this whole process, that one of the things that I do as a teacher and as for myself and for them is I always set impossibly high standards so that no matter how hard they are, and I'm proud along the way, no matter how hard they reach, there's always a higher height we can get to. And there have routinely been times throughout the year that my expectations have been blown out of the water and I've had to just kind of unexpectedly come up with something else to raise the bar because they have just then smashed me out of the park every single time and again and again. So we are really excited to be presenting SpongeBob this year. It is a different show. It's a really, really excellent story. For those of you who may have seen SpongeBob or have had children who watch SpongeBob, I promise you the music is different from what you have heard before. One of the things that is so unique and so wonderful about the SpongeBob score, the musical score, that all of the songs, each of the songs was handed off to a different high-profile artist to compose. So one was written by John Legend, one was written by Panic at the Disco, one was written by Yolanda Adams, Lady Antebellum did a song, Jonathan Coulton did a song, Steven Tyler. Like a bunch of the songs were written by a variety of genres and a variety of really high-profile artists, which gives each song a really unique twist. But I think there will definitely be a song that everyone will enjoy throughout the process of doing the show. So we are going to kind of start us off. We're going to give you the opening sequence of the show. It's a really nice opening sequence that gives you a little introduction to each of our leads, each of our main characters, as the each of our principal characters, our lead characters, our SpongeBob, our Patrick, as we move on. We do have our Sandy's a little bit sick today, so we have a fill-in Sandy for today, but I'm confident that you are going to enjoy. Yeah. See you. Yeah, yes. Look like there's taking the dance. Well, come on, do like a little small. Right.
Good morning, world. Oh, jump back in bed, fix up a breakfast for my favorites. Oh, sleepyhead. Yes, I am ready. It's battle. This kind of day couldn't get much better, but it keeps back. I found the way somewhere there's a crowd packed back. Hi. Happy to read now. I don't know this town shines down. Good, Mr. Patrick.
Oh, it's morning already.
Yep, I'm thinking about taking over.
I missed the snack. Its busy schedule makes it hard to stay on track. Now I'll have to eat while I'm watching TV. There might not be time for a nap, but I'm to go to my camp. There's no way to be in so every single one. I'm spending all day underneath my favorite bug.
It's a beautiful day. Spanish rocks. Laura, stop. How is would you two please?
Morning swimmer.
Today, I'm not fine.
Why not just
And there's no since the margins and get along with these bad. It's a great day, swimmer. I do deserve this. So thank you. I don't know how. Now it's just and now we know with this here what you did. Super. Beginning of popular dance function. When describing how I'm not getting the distinguished crowds. Speaks of these popular shops. The chumba. Run by Sean Kevin. Two are known for
everywhere with the sky sunny? Good when it's best. When you're in the mood to make a ton of money.
until the day like before. I got a friend and I went to college, so
They say that money doesn't matter every how who would say that probably? And let's turn but he got us but he got us I just said typical bikini on a
SpongeBob,
so in you got a twin daughter Pearl, one ticket is long. kids who graduate high school, I'll start to expand here.
But Dad,
Free, and what? You have women, 14 hours a day.
you called me a bunch of stinks.
She does all the things for me. You're just a simple sponge. A fry cook is all you
Can they see? I wear my good shoes and I've got my tongue. Am I just a simple sponge kid? Come on, Mr. Krabs, I can do it. Give me punches. Say, what about experience? I have never friends.
It's been a really good year. They've been working really hard. We gave them a lot of really tough stuff this year, and they've been pulling it off with a grace and elegance that I've not seen in a while. I want to take a minute and let some of my leads here introduce themselves and give their character name and who they are. They're great, so we know a little bit about our cast here. All right, Joe.
My name is Joe Wood. I'm in seventh grade and I play Patrick Starr.
My name is Carter Thornton. I am in eighth grade and I play SpongeBob SquarePants.
My name is Jalen Jennings. I'm in eighth grade and I play Mr. Krabs.
My name is Clover Kaiser. I'm in eighth grade and I play Plankton.
I'm Ava Goodrow. I'm in seventh grade and I play Squidward.
It's been a really awesome year. We've had a lot of unexpected events throughout the kids have been truly phenomenal at bouncing back from them. I mean, as you can see from our narrator who just before so and run off with another different and then came back in time to do the narrator. Just random unexpected things happen. It's been truly phenomenal day in and day out at counteracting and really making sure that their experience that show is going to be something they're proud of and happy about. So our shows this weekend are Friday and Saturday at 7 o'clock and Sunday at 2 o'clock. Tickets are $10 for adults and $5 for students and for seniors. We have all your names down at the door. If any of you would like to redeem a comp ticket, all of you have been invited to come and see the show free of charge. That we can really show you what you've allowed us to do for so many years and put up with my crazy antics so that they can come out there and put on a story that they're proud of and have an experience that I know and hope they will remember for a long time. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Board, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate and enjoy these days where we get to see the kiddos perform. They're also brave to get up there and do their thing. And I just want to thank the directors and all the parents who are involved in making sure that, this is happening. So we're really excited and we will see you this weekend.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just take the box.
It sums up little.
I know. She's like on it though.
Your helper here?
Yes, I know.
Very resourceful.
Take the box.
You can take the box.
Take the box.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I couldn't see it.
I know.
All these sports and stuff, it's like. Jumping is.
Yeah. We can see the.
So as we move on to the next part of our agenda, just wanted to make sure and address, we are accepting the resignation of Mrs. Carey as a board member tonight. Mrs. Carey gave a lot of time and effort. So I just want to publicly thank her for her 2 terms on the board. I think she brought a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge. She was kind of our resident policy and regulation person. She knew everything, what was going on. She did resign for personal reasons, and we fully support her in that, but I just really wanted to make sure that we publicly thanked her for her service to the community and for her leadership on this board. So I'm going to turn it over to our new board clerk and ask her to proceed with the next portion of the meeting.
So at this time, I'll be opening the floor for nomination for president of the Board of Education for the 24-25 school year. Do I have a motion to open the floor?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it. A roll call, Mrs. Geller,
Yes.
Mr. Jackson,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder,
Yes.
Mrs. Gendron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paradis,
Yes.
Mr. Droz.
Yes.
The floor is now open for nominations for president for the Board of Education for the 2024-25 school year. Do I have a nomination?
Nominate Margaret Giller.
I'll second that.
There are no other nominations for the office of president. I will close the floor for nominations. Do I have a motion to close the floor?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Roll call, Mrs. Giller,
Yes.
Mr. Jackson,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder,
Yes.
Mrs. Gendron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paradis,
Yes.
Mr. Droz.
Yes.
The motion, make a motion that Mrs. Geller be elected president of the Board of Education for the 2024-25 school year.
Make a motion.
Thank you.
We're all like, what?
Roll call again, Mrs. Geller,
Yes.
Mr. Jackson.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes.
Mrs. Gendron.
Yes.
Mrs. Paradis.
Yes.
And Mr. Droz.
Yes.
Want me to do the oath now or after we do the vice president?
Well, the oath goes now.
Okay.
Quiet.
Okay. Raise your right hand.
I, Margaret Giller, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of Board of Education President for the remainder of the 2024-25 school year according to the best of my ability. Okay, At this time, I would like to open the floor. Do I have a motion to open the floor for nominations for the office of Vice President of the Board of Education for the 24-25 school year?
I'll make a motion.
A second.
We have a roll call?
Mrs. Geller,
Yes.
Mr. Jackson,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder,
Yes.
Mrs. Gendron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paradis,
Yes.
and Mr. Droz.
Yes.
The floor is now open for nominations for Vice President for the Board of Education for the 24-25 school year. Do I have a nomination?
I'll nominate Rick Jackson as vice president.
I'll second that.
If there are no other nominations for the office of Vice President, I will close the floor for nominations. Do I have a motion to close the floor?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second that.
Roll call. Mrs. Geller,
Yes.
Mr. Jackson.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes.
Mrs. Gendron.
Yes.
Mrs. Paradis.
Yes.
And Mr. Droz.
Yes.
I need a motion that Mr. Jackson be elected Vice President of the Board of Education for the 24-25 school year.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second that.
The roll call. Mrs. Geller,
Yes.
Mr. Jackson.
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder. Mrs. Gendron.
Yes.
Mrs. Paradis.
Yes.
And Mr. Droz.
Yes.
It's office, sir.
Rick has to talk.
Raise your right hand and read that first part.
I, Richard Jackson, do solemnly swear I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of Vice President of the Board of Education for the 24-25 school year, according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. Thank you for.
For your selfless,
Do I get a sticker? Does anybody have?
Right on your forehead.
Yeah, I. Okay, so continuing on, I will turn it over at this point, Lieutenant O'Shea for our district reports. Thank you very much.
And thank you both very much for your service. So over the years, we've shared some of our work around students who have experienced adverse childhood experiences, and you've heard us talk about trauma sensitivity, trauma awareness. This evening, Dr. Mundell will present some information to you about taking this work to the next level in our district, trauma skills.
Well, thank you, Mrs. O'Shea. Introduction. And I want to compliment Mrs. O'Shea for her thought process in partnership with me on this and hearing my thoughts about some experiences that I've had with trauma-skilled schooling and being open to it. I want to thank the administrators that are going to be working very closely with us for their participation and their enthusiasm about it. Tonight, I want to talk with you about trauma-skilled schooling. We know that, especially post-pandemic, the world has changed. We know and hear the stories about the mental health crisis, particularly among adolescents. We know and hear the stories about changes in student behavior and chronic absenteeism and low academic performance. And all of those issues are problems in and of themselves. But what collectively, they're exponentially impactful to the experience of all students in school. And so the question becomes, well, what do we do about it? We can run around and put out fires, chasing down the misbehaviors, chasing down the students that are not showing up to school and chasing down the academic deficiencies, and we can get worn out. And what we found is that when we combine a social emotional approach that meets students where they are and an academic approach that meets students where they are individually, and collectively we come together to support all of the students' efforts, we can have great progress. And so the long search that I had in my own professional experience was, well, how do we characterize this? How do we tell the story? And at first I talked about poverty because our free and reduced lunch rate was moderately high and our extraordinary needs rate was nearly 70%. But when I talked about poverty, people got offended because they're prideful and they don't want to be classified as people in poverty. So we talked about adverse childhood experiences, the ACEs research. The problem with that is ACEs research and the understanding that adverse childhood experiences have an impact on health and life down the road didn't come with practices to address some of those experiences and what children particularly were experiencing. So we were looking for something that gave us some strategies. And the National Dropout Prevention Center, which is based in Georgia, and the Successful Practices Network, both national organizations, and the Successful Practices Network is based in Ballston Spa, New York, partnered up and came together around this issue of trauma and began doing a lot of research. And you can go to the National Dropout Prevention Center website and find all of that research. And I've collected some of the data out of that research for your consumption tonight. But I want to share with you the path that we're going to be creating as a prototype in our district here. And it is a path that both addresses the social emotional needs that we see, not just amongst the chronic students that they have challenges often, but also helping the students who have a game plan and are ready for school every day. And it will dramatically affect the positive climate in the schools. And it's also an academic approach because it will help students be more engaged and it will help students define their own pathway and plan for high school and life after high school. And I love your preparing our students for success in tomorrow's world. We're preparing them for their future, not our past, right? And so if you'll indulge me for just a few minutes, in the research from the National Dropout Prevention Center, they found that nearly 65% of children in America have witnessed at least one crime, violent act, or abusive situation in the last year. And 50% of those students have experienced more than one of those violent, traumatic issues. And then 15% have experienced 6 or more. I'm talking about 5-year-olds whose brains are not fully developed, not even close to being fully developed. And when their hormones and their glands shoot out cortisol and adrenaline, it's like crack. And so it becomes an addiction. It has a dramatic physical impact on the body. 2.5 million children, roughly, at any time in America are homeless. Not knowing where the next meal is going. Not knowing if they're going to have to pack up and move out of a place in the middle of the night and go to someplace else. How am I heading to school? Is the bus going to pick me up at the new place and take me all the way back way over there? I had those situations. Children experience, 57% of those children experience at least one day per month without food. Half of the children in shelters report conflict or abuse against a family member or a friend. And I just consider these traumatic experiences. We've all had these. The death of a family member. But maybe it's a grandma or a grandma, an aunt or an uncle, a cousin. Incarceration. Remember, it goes away for a long time. Divorce. Domestic violence, the loss of a pet, it can be a traumatizing situation for 7. Loss of jobs, parents in conflict, economic struggle, all are examples of trauma that impact our students every day. Systemic trauma, and it's chronic over and over. Now, part of the awareness building is what's the impact of that on the human body and on the human psyche? And the children, their brains are not developed. In fact, the youngsters that step off the stage with their diploma in hand do not have a fully developed brain. It's not until age 25. Now I would ask you this. How many of all of us have experienced one or more of those kinds of traumatic experiences in our lifetimes? Of course we have. Trauma impacts all of us. And think of the world the way it is today and how it's changed, not just since the pandemic, but in the last 15 or 20 years. The rate of information exchange is at the rate of the speed of light. And it's overwhelming and it's frenetic. And the level of stress that we all come under is astronomical. Put that in the body of a 10-year-old, in the mind of a 10-year-old. And imagine how they try to learn to navigate with all of that pressure. It's estimated that we could surmise that 8 out of 10 students that come to us every day have some kind of impact of trauma that they're carrying with them. We never see it though, it's invisible. Until they call Mrs. Smith, their English teacher, and you're thrown out of class. Or until my good friend Nick from 15 years ago got to 4th period, ran down to the cafeteria, and he was a diabetic, and got the Slurpee and guzzled it down. And in 15 minutes, the cheeks were rosy, and I knew it was going to be a long afternoon. They sent Nick around the building. And so the impact of trauma causes kids to, the human response is to do one of 3 things. Fight, flight, or freeze. The adrenaline shoots, and some people run. You can't run because then you're not tough. And you can't freeze because you don't know anything. So you have to fight. And so we get conflict, and we get verbal abuse, we get fantasy, we get bullying, we get all these things, and school administrators are chasing these things down every day. I know I did it for 14 years as an assistant principal and a principal in 5 different places. If 80% of all the students are trauma impacted, just imagine if half of those had some adverse behavior, adverse attendance, or adverse academic performance as a result. That's the problem. So what do we do about it? Trauma Skills Schooling is a program developed and put out in 2018 in partnership with the Successful Practices Network and the National Dropout Prevention Center. In fact, Dr. Bill Daggett is on the executive board of the Dropout Prevention Center, and he's the founder of Successful Practices. He's a Capital Region educator and administrator, and he was an employee as an assistant commissioner at the State Education Department, overseeing the CTE program. He's retired now, in his 80s, still a renowned speaker, and just a sought-after person, a wealth of knowledge. They came together and they considered this notion of trauma-informed. And so Shay said, we made this idea of trauma, apparent and inform people, but is that enough? Schools must become trauma skilled in order to be able to apply actions that are more likely to produce the desired student outcomes rather than simply knowing trauma. It's about practice. What do we do? So this Trauma Skilled Schools Service is a 2-year program. And it's been developed by the Prevention Center and the Successful Practices Network. You can go to either one of those websites and see all the research. It's right there. They lay it out as resources that you can consume. It's a 2-year training cycle focused on school buildings and school building team leaders who will be trained in trauma awareness and the development of trauma skills and fully engaged with it. And they will be turnkey trainers with the rest of the staff. I'm not just talking about the teaching staff. We train bus drivers. We train cafeteria workers, TAs, aides, and clerics. So everybody in the school community is a part of this. And there's an important reason for that. At the end of the 2-year training cycle, The school, having demonstrated a plan, will become trauma skill certified, get a nice big banner, and have a reception. Day came to our school 3 years ago now, and presented all the certificates. All the members on the building teams will be certified as trauma skills specialists, and they'll get certificates for their training. And it will affect the school practice. The program is a tier 1 student support intervention. So it's for the general population and all students. And here's where it gets interesting. We're not just seeking to affect behavior and climate in our schools and improve attendance in our schools, but we're seeking to give kids tools that they can use to manage themselves and grow as students and young adults and become they're good graduates that go on to college and to careers. There's language that goes with this in terms of the culture of resilience, where what we'll learn about is that in any school setting or in a group social setting, it's important to have connections. That right in this room tonight, we're all connected either by employment or as community members. We're in the field of education, we have a dynamic set of connections within this group. Each of us also has a value that we bring to this. So we all belong to this group because we have value and we recognize that value in each other, which is the first 2 factors of the 5 factors of cultural resilience. Autonomy. Speak your piece respectfully. You may disagree. You may discuss, make decisions and determinations just as you did this evening. That's autonomy. Not having someone else direct you. We need to teach kids how to be autonomous. It doesn't come naturally. We need to teach them how to achieve, and that's all about planning and having a plan each day. For some kids, it's a goal to just get out of bed in the morning and make it to school. For other kids, they want to get 100 on physics test. And so we need to meet both of them where they are. And then when they realize when they have a plan they can achieve, then they'll feel confident about coming to school, feel confident about the connections they have. They'll feel confident about the curriculum and the excitement about learning, and they'll see the relevance. And that's where it becomes really exponentially synergistic. And so they'll then begin to pay it forward. And community service, like middle school is so great. I never graduated 8th grade. I love school principal. They have so much energy, and they stand before you at 12 and they're singing their hearts out. And we should encourage that. They have such value, and they're so cohesive, and they're coming here to give it to you and pay it forward. It's like, thank you. That represents the best of the best. So that kind of climate is something we want to continue to expand. And as we do that, kids will be more and more engaged. More kids will come to school. They'll have purpose when they're here. And so they'll not get involved in some of the other behaviors. And we'll teach them how to be resilient and overcome those adversities that they've experienced. It's not a therapeutic program. It is just a tier 1 intervention, giving and providing based upon the climate in the school and what the staff and the students come up with. The students came up with the slogan that's on the back of the t-shirts out in the district. 3 towns, 2 schools, 1 community together. That was their slogan, the children. And it was really powerful to watch them spend a week trying to figure that out and bring it back. So we're going to pay for this with the school improvement grant and Title IV funds to procure the training. It's about $80,000 for the 2 years. We're going to work with 2 buildings in the district, the high school and with Williamson. And in fact, there's some strategic thinking about that. It's based upon some of the experience of the Lansing staff in terms of being trauma informed. We're very excited to see that this has some practice to it. And high school is really looking for a sophisticated social emotional approach that can support the academic programming that we want to raise up as well. And so this program can accomplish that over time. It's not an overnight fix. It's not going to come in and give a booster shot and it's going to be all taken care of tomorrow, but it's going to be an effort and it's going to grow from the ground up. Ask them, they have a comment or two to express your excitement.
I'm so excited.
She signed up as an individual.
Listen, you have autonomy in what you said.
I know.
I think everyone did a great job sharing the why. And we already know that. We don't sell that here. And as you know, it's for the data on the Google slide. It's what we're living and breathing every day in our hallways at our school. And there's so many good practices already happening. What I love about this is the time of that good work together. And I love the cycle of training. Because I use the analogy of like working out. It's not like, well, we did ACES training, we're in shape, we never have to lift the weight again, we're good. This is sort of that cyclical nature of don't forget why, and let's hone in our practice. And then I love the national dropout prevention piece, because one of the biggest things we struggle with in Cohoes City School District with our grad rate is the dropout piece. We get people to the finish line if they stay. How do we keep them all there when they are facing such significant trauma? So I'm hoping that this will be a complement to the work that's already happening. It will encompass the work that's happening and streamline it. It will train people, it will empower people. And I am certainly excited and willing to do whatever it takes to do some new things, think outside the box, and create that culture of resilience, which is so important that we know for our students every day when they're coming in.
Thank you.
I keep following. Very excited. I couldn't hear very well, but I'm sure I heard Dr. Mendel say that a man's brain doesn't fully develop until he's 75. So. We're on the list. I don't know if you know that. And every year we've been on the list, we're out looking for what's the magic bullet. No, there isn't one. But we're always trying to find another way to capture what we need to do to make our kids be successful. And a couple of days ago, also, you all allowed us to start what we're calling the reset group last year, which is reaching the kids that are traumatized and trying to reach them where they are and not them get any worse, or trying to help them out. We feel that's been successful, but about a month ago, we asked Ms. O'Shea to come and meet with our team, because we had 9 students that we just couldn't figure out. For a social worker, they don't fit the mold of going into special ed. They're just not being successful at what we do. And we threw our hands up and said, we don't. She came up with a couple of ideas, and then as she was walking out the door, said, I really want you to talk about it. But I brought him in, and he met with our team and explained this whole process. And what we began to see was something that tied us all of our work together. So those of us that have been working on behavior, those of us that have been struggling to work on our academic students. I started my training today for CIS, Therapeutic Crisis Intervention for Schools. Which is trauma-based, right? So everything we've been doing has been trauma-based, but at Lansing, over the years in our panic, we've been doing all our little individual pieces. And what this program seems to offer is something that ties it all together. So I don't have to start talking about academics and behavior and all these other things, but I can talk about one whole piece that will move our school. So my entire team, it wasn't just me, my entire team, when Dr. Mendel was finished presenting this, said, this is where we need to go. So we're set and ready. We just need somebody to switch.
Thank you. Any questions? I'm sure you'll hear more from.
So I mean, love banners, love certifications, love being, experts in our field. But to me, those things are aside from what this, I think, could potentially bring to our schools. I think that this is something that just hearing your presentation, something that every school district should be looking at right now. I think that, we really have a social problem out in the world where there's a lack of respect for educators and education in general. I know that we have been experiencing some difficulty this year with not only, students being able to control some of those trauma responses that you were talking about, but parents as well. And so I guess, first of all, I want to say I'm really proud of our team. I think that our teams have responded to events, especially those who are in the building every day dealing with this. Like you said, it's causing burnout. They should not have to put up and deal with, all of these massive events that are happening that are, affecting the entire school environment. I think that it's unfair for our staff. I think it's unfair for families. I think it's unfair for our students who don't know what it's like to have a normal experience without feeling that. So I think that this is very timely. I am questioning from a board perspective. Our job is thinking about policies and procedures and budgets and how we can help support this work, because this is a forward thinking, also down the road. If it's a 2-year program, what do we do to put out those fires now? And what do we need to do to put supports in place that will not only help make this successful, but in the meantime, still meet the needs of our kids and our community? Because at the moment, it is feeling like we are not doing that, and we are not supporting potentially some things that might happen or could happen. And if that's a budget impact, I know we always talk about cell phones. They're a huge issue, and, they get some of those kiddos who wouldn't necessarily respond in the fight response to respond in the fight response, because, it just builds up the anxiety and the pressure and, all of these things. So I guess my questions are more, how do we lay the groundwork to say, this is our commitment and this is what we want to see, understanding that it's going to take us some time to get there, but still communicating that we have zero tolerance for violence or disruption or any of the things that are causing the kids who are currently in school to not achieve that academic success or that social success, or the pieces that make you a person that can function in the world outside of school. So that's a big question. I'm not necessarily thinking that, I'm asking for a yes or a no, or I think that it's very hard for us because we have only been meeting once a month, for the last 2 months. And here, this is every 2 weeks for us, moving forward. But to feel like something is being done now, something is happening right now, because I don't want to hear about our principals being attacked by other adults in our community, or our staff members being, yelled at by, students who are walking through our doors. And, you had mentioned our homeless population. You had mentioned, our students with disabilities. How do we support those different needs now to make sure that we can be confident moving forward that we have a foundation to support this? Because right now, I think that, and I don't know what the conversation is. We've had so many conversations about different alternative options for kids. I know that we see a need here for a student who doesn't necessarily fit or belong in a typical school environment. We have tried BOCES programming. We've tried neighboring with other districts. We have tried, our own off-campus programs. We have tried a lot of different things to try and get some solutions. And the fact of the matter is, even if we get this in place in 2 years, it could potentially be that there are still kiddos who just can't function within the capacity of our buildings and what we can offer. And it's not okay for us to just say, well, we can't do anything for them, and to Laura's point with, the dropout rates and trying to capture these kiddos and looking at, this is not, we've said before that it's kids that are moving into our district and we have no control of, and they're not coming through. That's really not what it is anymore. These are kids that are in our community, that have been in our community, who are growing up here and learning these behaviors. And, I think that when we have these conversations, we talk about middle and high school. Like, we talk about elementary school being a beginning, where we're just reaching the surface. But Mr. McFarland, at some point, you have a point where you say, okay, this kiddo can't function here. So my conversation, I think that we need to have is, what do we do as a school board to prepare for this? What can we do to support budgetarily, policy, if it means redoing our code of conduct tomorrow? I feel like this school board would do that to make sure that whatever we have to put in place to give you the tools that you need to make sure that our kids are safe, that our staff is safe, and we are actually being able to accomplish the charge of educating children, because there's just too many distractions. There's a lot of fear, and I think that we have to do something, and we have to do something tomorrow, not 2 weeks from now, not 3 months from now, not 2 years from now. Again, that is not saying I'm not in support of this program. I think it is a long-term answer, absolutely. I just feel like something needs to happen to minimize the distractions sooner than later.
So let me address some of that. Tonight, we presented this because we are planning to put it on the agenda at the next board meeting. We wanted you to have a clear understanding. You're using grant funds, but what you would be approving. And as Dr. Mundell said, this is a tier 1. We've been having many other conversations, some that will take piece of our budget conversation in the future, some that we can do right away. So I'm just going to go through some of those components and then, turn it over to Dr. Mundell, or we can also, Laura or Cliff or Kyle. So we have been talking about cell phones, and that's a, one piece. Our administrators are going to be, Laura is going to be visiting some schools that have implemented, yonder pouches, et cetera, getting some feedback, and then coming to you with recommendations about that. So that is one piece. Right now, we have a strict off and away policy, but with the pouches, you can put them in as soon as students come into school. That's not saying we're going to do that. That's just saying we need to explore, talk to others, and then come to you and talk about that. We've looked at our code. Our code gives us flexibility with different things the way it's written. So I don't think it's going to require any major.
I'm just saying, if you need it to be more specific, bring it. We will be more specific.
We'll do that. It's really multifaceted. There's safety and there's interventions, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So in terms of safety, some of the things that you have supported already, school safety officers, campus safety monitors. We believe we need at least 1, if not 2 additional campus safety monitors. So that is something we'll be coming to you with. Time, right now, looking at the time that campus safety monitors and safety officers work. perhaps trying to prolong that time. I know that Laura has been working with Mr. D'Angelico and Mr. Lombard, who do our scheduling, and we have safety officers who are interested and willing to do an additional shift. That's a right-of-way thing, you know, a shift from the end of the day to later. Yes?
Could I add, I think we're on the precipice of getting an organized 4 to 9 or 4 to 8
Yep.
PM shift within the next couple of weeks. Because school safety to me has now moved to after school hours as well, where the buildings are bustling. And there's very little structure and supervision in terms of people are home now, it's dinner time, but there's still kids in the building, and they're doing sports, and they're doing clubs, which is all positive and great. But we need to have a safer environment with a little more structure and oversight. And so the safety officer model will provide a Monday through Friday twilight shift, if you would, to help us supervise the building, especially when administration has gone home for the day.
So that's in the works, and we have names, and we've reached out. Some other interventions, talking about tier 1 in terms of this. But if we catch students earlier in more of a preventive manner down the road, that will mean less students. You've heard us talk about some of other interventions that we're putting in place, but what you will be hearing soon is through the resource allocation review grant that I mentioned. The whole framework is around the multi-tiered systems of support. So through that funding, really looking at staggered systems of supports for students in each of those levels, academically and behaviorally as well. Alternative programming, that is going to be a discussion at the budget table as well. We have our tutoring center, which has been. Oh, it's okay. Okay. We've had our tutoring center at the high school. This is year 1, correct?
Tutoring center, full year,
Yep.
full year 1, there was some pilot in the
Yep.
spring, it's going great.
That has been very successful. We have sent some 8th graders there. We are looking at, is there a model or some type of model that could work at the middle school? So these are discussions, plans in the work, some of them right away, not as part of the budget process, some of them as part of the budget process. We'll present over the period of board meetings in the near future. I just think I haven't mentioned that you have questions about.
Can I?
1 second. Laura just wanted to say something really.
If I could just add, at the end of first quarter, we saw a 50% reduction in suspensions at the high school and a 40% reduction in referrals from last year. We were thrilled.
Yeah.
So the feeling, right, this feeling we have right now and the data don't match. But what I have a hunch on is that it's the intensity.
Yes. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
It's not
These very few
Right.
isolated, like,
Yes.
what do we do to support that small group?
Exactly.
I couldn't, maybe, and I didn't say it well enough, but I'm truly very proud of your team and what you have done.
Yes.
I know that you have been working very hard on the culture of your building, but the fact of the matter is, there is just a population that needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed right now, because anecdotally, it's like, oh, there was suspensions and like the whole environment was different. And now coming back off of it, it's like firing up, just emotions of some of those responses that other kids who wouldn't be getting involved are now because of that. So please, if I didn't mean to insinuate that this is a gigantic problem, it's more of the intensity, the aggression of, very few isolated incidents where it's a very small population. But again, we're talking about trauma happening at home.
Yes.
We also don't want trauma to happen at school.
Right.
Yeah.
The collateral damage that goes,
Yes.
there's
Yes.
collateral trauma.
talk a lot about like our menu of services, right? And ultimately, we have a lot of programs, a lot of buckets of programs, but in a very general scope, you have gen ed and you can come to the high school and you can go to the general high school. And if that doesn't work for you, where do you go? You know, because we're so small. And we are getting, yes, we've had many kids here many years that do very well and some struggle, but we are getting populations of kids from other settings with the menu of services this small. Well, it didn't work for me in the general high school. So I went to this center, I went to this program, I went to this alternative. So we just don't have that right now. And I think you used the word commitment earlier. This is a commitment, right? A multi-year commitment. I think the question is to be, if this is the commitment, you know, is our commitment to then put all of the things, the brains, the answers are in this room, put all the brains together to say, really, let's commit to developing. Have we ever really committed to developing a robust alternative program, a secondary 7-12 robust alternative program? Or have we tried a bunch of things haphazardly in response, quick, to throw something together, we'll have it off-site, we'll have it here. I think if we really said, this is the goal, this is the commitment, we could come up with something strategic to prevent suspensions and prevent behaviors.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of the conversation. I don't want to jeopardize and monopolize, but I think it's something we can talk about. Yeah.
I just want to say thank you so much for the presentation, for thinking this, for going along with it, for heading it up, because as we all are aware, this is a huge problem in our schools, in our environments, in our workplaces, and everywhere. Trauma is everywhere. Everybody has experienced it. And thank you for thinking of it and thinking of this and bringing this to us and bringing these ideas and working with Laura and working with Cliff. And I look forward to you working with the middle school, because as Laura has said, at the high school, they have decreased 50%. I would like to see what has been happening at the middle school, because there is more that is happening at the middle school than we hear about and that are being communicated, and we need to be addressing the middle school also. The bell-to-bell no cell, I'm on board. It's going to be across New York State anyway. I think the sooner that we look into it, the sooner that we will reap the benefits of it. You know, school districts are doing it. We have to set the tone that there is no excuse. There's no excuse. There's no excuse for the violence. We have, as Mr. DeRose said earlier, we have an obligation to keep our children safe and our students safe and our employees safe, our teachers safe, our administrators safe. And there is no tolerance for what is happening. And we need to set that tone. And thank you, because you have proposed more, I think, with just the trauma skill than we've heard from others prior to you. So thank you.
If I could add on, talking about the middle school, 2 weeks from now, you're going to hear about restorative practices through Mediation Matters. At the middle school, we had applied for a $40,000 grant. We got a $20,000 grant. So Kyle and Jill and I and Rachel met with Mediation Matters. And their first step is to come in, meet with the building leadership team here, and then meet with teachers, then meet with students, listen, and then together develop a plan, including training and training for both staff and then students in ways to, before things escalate, put some supports in place. So we're just in those initial meeting phases, but I wanted to let you know that that is something that's going to be happening at the middle school. And then as part of this, I hope, my plan, our plan, is not to have it stop at Lansing and the high school. But we need to start somewhere. Lansing does have the funds through the school comprehensive education plan. And then we are able to, through school improvement in Title IV, begin with the high school, get through the, initial process, and then present a plan to you for future years. And then as part, as I mentioned, of the grant, resource allocation, really show a clearly, here's what we're doing, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. But even with all of that, we do need alternative programming. For some of you, if you're not aware, and I know you mentioned it, we had BOCES that didn't work. We had Page Avenue that didn't work. We tried Trinity. That wasn't the best. I think what Laura just said, we can't just say this is a small thing to try to fix, a few issues. We really do have to look. And, that's going to mean maybe looking outside of our walls. We're part of a Rivertown consortium with Waterville, Manans, Green Island, other districts. I think it involves looking and working with other districts as well to try to meet our needs.
Yeah.
So
everybody's struggling. All the districts are struggling. So it's not just a Cohoes problem. Everybody has it. And the more help we can get from and help others, it's a win-win. So good. Thank you.
So I just want to, you mentioned the word commitment. I'm your girl. I committed to making something happen and to supporting whatever it is that we need to do to set the groundwork framework. And I'm speaking as, my personal time, I would commit to you, if anyone wanted to have conversations or meetings or, whatever that looks like. I am part of the safety committee. I'm happy to, have those discussions. So commitment from me for sure, for whatever supports we need. I just want to reiterate, a lot of times we talk about things and then it just kind of gets moving down the road. And so I do feel like, and I know that I'm speaking, but I've had conversations, every single person sitting at this table have, yes?
Yes.
And, we all feel very strongly that we are here to support in whatever capacity that means. We're not asking to come into your buildings and change your discipline policies or whatever you're doing. We're not asking for that. We're just asking for a plan and for you to let us know how we can support you. And then we'll beg Stacy. So that's it. I'm done.
thank you. Clicker. Please. So just very briefly, we did have a technology committee meeting on January 2nd. I want to thank Mrs. Snyder, Mr. Giroux for attending. It was there we go. Okay. So the draft charge of the committee is there. I'd like to let you know that it was mentioned, we had students, we had staff at the committee. It was mentioned, please add families. We're adding families to the charge of the committee. The agenda, first PJ did where we currently stand with technology in terms of Chromebooks, interactive displays, our plans for, through the budget process. We can share those documents with you. We have them broken down by grade level, Chromebook type. We then talked about a Google add-on issue that's been brought to district's attention throughout the Capital District. Yeah.
She's telling me these days, these are her favorite words. Talk to Tim about that.
So.
Yeah, so in December, the Google folks notified the field that their add-on services, now it's not the classroom suite of services that all the districts operate with, it's add-on services like Google Translate, the YouTube service and others like that For us, it is about the Google Translate, and our staff and students have access to YouTube through thing. So they were saying, well, if we're gonna shut off these add-on services for data privacy purposes, and if you want to continue with those services, you have to get parent permission, and that parent permission will allow them to offer the service, and it wouldn't be a violation of the Federal Education Rights to Privacy Act because the parents are signing it away, right? However, State Ed Department reminded us about Ed Law 2D.
It's not my list,
and reminded us that there could be potential exposure of, student privacy and student data. So the field has been rummaging this issue about. NARIC attorneys have been in negotiations and conversations and consultation with the DPO people at State Ed. Alternatives have emerged. Get-arounds with regard to YouTube have emerged. The field has come up with other alternatives for Translate. We have a DPO meeting tomorrow. I suspect that this will be a major piece of that agenda. And talking with PJ, and my mind about it is by the end of January, we need to make a decision about Translate, particularly based upon what the information is at the time. If something changes and Google happens to sign a third-party agreement, great. I don't think that's going to happen, but we wanted to give it time so that we all understand and don't make rash movements and then be caught off guard. Different districts are in different positions. There are districts in the region who have ransomware background and who are highly sensitive to privacy issues because of their past traumatizing experience. And so we're not in that boat. We can take our time and understand the situation and then make a determination, and we'll still have the month of February and the month of March to execute whatever decision that we make. Thoughts, questions?
So how, now the Google Translate, I do understand there are certainly other services out there that could provide a similar thing. YouTube. So that's a tough one. And I just wonder how impacted that would make our buildings, with our secondary students, I think mostly, because as far as, I don't know, even having adults use it and saying it's on a display for one singular lesson is one thing, but then to, expect kids to access, something outside, well, that's certainly going to affect. And, some things are only offered on YouTube. I don't know, how there's solutions. I have heard that, like you said, like some folks are trying to kind of go around it by downloading videos, and then, you have to worry about copyright infringements and, things like that. So I guess which is a question for everyone. It was such a short notice, but I feel like the YouTube piece is going to be the most impacted.
I think the intent there is there's no student data at risk if the kids aren't using the search bar. So once they start all using the search bar, now the algorithms are turning and collecting cookies and information. And so if a teacher uses Google Slides and embeds a link in a slide and uses that link to project whatever YouTube clip, now the kids are not accessing that search bar. If kids use YouTube privately, that's their business. So our devices, we would have to make some decisions about our devices and what the filtering is going to be.
So to be continued, some more meetings. We also talked about professional learning, and There were requests from teachers to have more training on Parent Square. There's some more features in Parent Square and also Canva. So Jensen Giacomo will be setting those up. There was a parent member in attendance, and so there's also some discussion about some parent training, also about some access of certain sites. And then finally, we have subscribed, and I think it was at the last board meeting you approved, Magic School AI, and what that will do is it has many, many tools for our educators to use in terms of lesson planning, developing assessments, IEPs, strong component for our ENL, and then students can also use it, and it encourages students to use AI responsibly. So we just got the cross contract back from another BOCES, and Jensen Giacomo's attending training, and then she's going to be doing training at each of the buildings for staff, and then supporting in the classroom as needed. So anything, Mr. Giroux or Mrs. Snyder, that I didn't mention that you'd like to add?
But the meeting was fine. It was, yeah, informative, but no, nothing for me.
Excited to jump back in. I feel like it's been a little bit.
I know, right?
To be back on the technology front.
Yeah, and all of us heard you, and we're trying to make our meetings much more collaborative and interactive and asking for feedback and not just giving information. So I did ask you for some feedback.
I mean, it's nice. It was nice, or the Google Meet is nice, but when we had our health, the other,
It was more.
yeah, when we were on site, it seems like that's a little,
Yeah.
the information flows a little easier. It's nice on Zoom, but
Yeah.
I mean, everybody should be here in Cohoes, within, so it shouldn't be that much of it. I know it was bad that day out
Yeah.
Zoom, but the other meeting when we're together, it seems like information goes a little more freely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next meeting will be together, and I'll bring refreshments.
I think that works. Yeah, I think it does work better when you're in front of people. Yeah.
Okay.
And have snacks.
And so, what I had mentioned, so our facilities committee, we were supposed to have OAT today, it got rescheduled to Monday, so on Monday, we're going to be asking Turner and CS Arch for a series of dates that they could potentially meet, and then we'll be reaching out to the facilities committee members. I thought I might have some potential dates tonight, but I don't.
So that was actually going to be a portion of the other items, was if there was going to be a facilities and capital project update coming.
So we're going to do the facilities committee meeting before the end of January, and then the capital project update at our February. And if we would like another in February, we could do it. So I'm now going to turn this over, Stacy, right? It's you, to Stacy Mack.
'Tis that time of year. 24-25 budget process. So we're going to continue on with the zero-based approach, starting from the ground up, and the return on investment process as well. Our budget goals, when we talked about our long-range financial plan, is to stay obviously within the tax cap, to not exceed the tax cap. At our February meeting, we'll walk through that calculation and what that looks like. And there's no planned use of reserves as far as the local budget. We do expect to have a proposition for a capital reserve expenditure for the 2 million. And then depending on the outcome of the facilities committee meetings, potentially another proposition for another capital reserve. That might be this year, it might be a year out. It depends on our progress. The budget planning meetings are happening right now. We have for the elementary, the BLT is scheduled for January 9th and the 16th. We had one scheduled for the 7th, but we had some illnesses, so that one is going to be rescheduled.
Yeah, I have a date. It's you later.
And secondary meetings are scheduled for January 22nd and the 27th, with the budget committee meetings occurring the final week of January. And action items for the board. The actual budget will be approved April 23rd. And the public hearing this year is going to be on May 7th, with the actual vote happening on May 20th. Any questions or feedback on any of those items?
Since I know the governor's day of the state's coming up, I know I've heard some meetings in regards to foundation aid, but is there any grumblings out there in regards to any kind of change in foundation aid or update to that?
Yeah,
Great.
that's actually on the next slide.
Oh.
Everyone's excited. I like that. I'm sorry.
And she has red on that one.
It's on the slide after this one.
You can go forward and back.
Nope, sorry.
No, I'll be quiet. I did see it on the slide.
We won't. We'll talk about it in just a moment. So this is for your presentation and open for discussion, and we can tweak this if we need to. So February 12th, that's the one we can't tweak though, because there's a 3/1 deadline. February 12th, we need to talk about the property tax cap and what that looks like. That's always fun. The eyes always glass over. But we'll have that discussion, and we should have a preliminary, an executive run, because the state of the state is on the 14th. So we should know something next week. So we'll talk about that at that meeting. We'll talk about that before then, but again, at that meeting. March 5th will be the presentations from our elementary principals on what their needs are for the year.
Stacy, hot off the press, John McDonald is joining us. It's March 5th, correct? It's March 5th. Assemblymember McDonald.
On March 19th, we'll have our secondary schools present, so the middle school and the high school, as well as our athletic director. On April 9th, we'll do the centralized services. So we'll meet with, we'll have a presentation from information technology, facilities, special programs, and central office. And assuming that the state budget is on time, we would have an update on revenues at that time. April 16th is in red because it's not a scheduled meeting. If we need to meet and deliberate, if there was a budget gap and we needed to make some decisions, that's a placeholder for that to happen before the board takes action to approve the actual budget. So that item, we can talk about if that works for the majority of the board members. If that date is problematic, that's just a recommendation for a placeholder. May or may not happen. April 23rd would be when the board would take action to actually adopt the budget. And then again, the public vote is on May 7th, with the board taking action to approve the results the day after the vote. So that'll be on May 21st. Any conversation about dates or content on any of the dates?
I think that the potential placeholder date, if you guys can just review your calendars and get back to me.
Is that the week? Is that Easter week?
Yep. Yeah. It's fine. Not putting you on the spot before, saying like you can.
I know, isn't that crazy?
Week school's closed.
You can get back to me and let me.
Yeah, that is the week they're.
Okay, and then I will let you make sure that we're in good shape there. Okay.
We may not need it, but we like to have it just in case.
I will keep my fingers.
Me too. So under the business updates, that's where we'll talk about what Ms. Snyder was asking about. So the Rockefeller Institute Foundation Aid Study, it's 300 short pages. It was released. Was released on December 2nd, and so I've attended a webinar and a meeting to talk about it. And I have an article here, which I thought was really well written. And so I wanted to go over some of the key points. There are some of the recommendations. It doesn't mean that they're going to happen.
Right.
But they were recommended. There's a report. The governor asked for the report. So some of the recommendations we talked about last time we met, foundation or fund balance was one of the recommendations, increasing that to potentially 10%. The district would be required to have a plan to spend that down within 5 years. It would need to be approved by SED and actually in the recommendation, even public vote. So that was one recommendation. For districts that had excess of 10%, the recommendation would be if they were a hold harmless district, that excess would be used to offset anything that they were being funded through hold harmless. We are not a hold harmless district. We only just were fully funded last year, so that doesn't impact us. Other recommendations included eliminating guaranteed minimums for wealthy schools. There's a 500 minimum per student. So taking a look at that, taking a look at fully funding the zero emissions bus mandate. So that was a recommendation. Updating the formula to have more current data. And anything that's implemented a phase-in approach so that it can be managed over time and not in one swell, 1 year. Also separate aid categories for certain circumstances, students with disabilities, significant impacts in enrollment, unplanned. And to take a look at student measurement, student performance measurements as well. So again, a lot of recommendations in the meetings. Basically, the feedback was until January 14th, we don't know what is going to happen. The governor was quoted that safe harmless wasn't going to be something that was looked at basically for the current year. So that gives peace of mind, I think, because it's about half of schools that are impacted by that. So it was giving those schools peace of mind that that's not something that would happen in the proposed budget. So that's the talk of the table. We'll see what comes of that. As soon as we have the January 14th State of the State, we'll have a little bit of an idea of what that looks like. And then I'm sure on March 5th, when Assemblymember McDonald visits us, he'll give us a lot of insight on where that's going and if the budget looks like it's going to be on time. Also,
Stacey,
fun stuff.
one other part of the budget, I did hear back. So we are coordinating a meeting with the city as well with Mayor Keeler, Mike DeRozier, and
the new assessor.
And we'll try to coordinate, with your schedule too over the next few weeks. So when Ashley will work to set that up. So work with Mrs. Giller to know. Okay, thank you.
We did kick off negotiations with our CSEA unit in December, so that was exciting. That contract expires at the end of this school year, so we're starting to work on that. And we have some meetings in January and in February, which is timely because that'll help us with projections for the budget process. So we're working on that. We did have the transparency reporting that was due December 31st. They changed it a little bit this year. So instead of my own templates that I had been using for the last several years, I actually use somebody else's template. state aid planning, and things worked out just fine. I got through it. So that's to done. And the governor's state of the state's going to be January 14th at 1 o'clock, so I plan on watching that. And then just the normal quarterly and year-end reporting. So we're working on the 941s are on my desk to be reviewed, and we're working on 1099s, which will be e-filing this year, and the W-2s by January 31st. So all work in progress.
Thank you. Any questions for Stacy?
Okay, and then just finally, some upcoming events. The SpongeBob, which we all heard about, UBK Lunch and Learn Parenting Series, and then No School Martin Luther King.
We'll mention the Lunar New Year.
The lunar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Mary Beth is going to be sending communication reminding parents of both this week. So everyone knows.
Great.
That's it.
Thank you. Okay, moving on with the agenda. Do any of the board members have anything on the agenda that they'd like to discuss tonight? I would just briefly like to bring up the resignation that we are about to accept. Mentioned earlier today. There are a few housekeeping items that we just need to iron out, and I think specifically with the conversation regarding the budget, we need to make sure that we have support on that committee. Mr. Jackson needs friends. Also, policy committee. I am the sole member will be at the end of this. So just like to open the floor to any interest in either budget and or policy committee moving forward through till the end of the school year.
Margaret, I'll throw my hand in the ring for budget, as long as I do not have to be on policy.
Okay. I do feel like I heard that from other members. Thank you.
Indeed, thank you.
You need, yeah, because Nadie was on the policy committee. I
Yep.
mean, I could absolutely do that.
Oh,
I second that nomination.
He's one laughing much, let the next few meetings.
well, there we go.
Anything else on the agenda? Does the community have any items on tonight's agenda that they would like to discuss? Okay, so can I get a motion that the Board of Education adopts the following resolutions of the January 8th, 2025 agenda, 6A through E and 7A through Q?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it. Mrs. Geller?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Gendron?
Yes.
Mrs. Paradis?
Yes.
And Mr. Droz?
Yes.
So if I could just mention that you just accepted the resignation for retirement purposes of Danny Gibson from his position. I don't know, I'm sorry if I took it from physical position as phys ed teacher for many, many years. And we want to thank him for his service.
He will certainly be missed. He is a very big personality and he has added a lot to our district. And I know each of our kids have a relationship with him that have gone through this middle school. And so he will be certainly missed, but congratulations to Mr. Gibson. Board of Education discussion of anything that was not related to the agenda, anything
I do.
you'd like to say?
First off, it was discussed already, but I am going to discuss the bell to bell no cell. That is, if not going to be part of legislation going forward from Governor Hochul, I do think that it needs to be investigated now as opposed to later. I also want to address the lack of communication. I have had several parents come to me on the lack of communication that is coming out of the middle school, on the incidents that are happening in the middle school.
some of the communication pieces we will address that can't be addressed publicly, but
Absolutely. I'm just saying that I've had parents come to me with concerns about the lack of communication that has come out of the middle school for incidents that may or may not have happened on grounds or off grounds. And I told the parents that I would bring this up at our meeting because it is very serious. I've had a parent that has had her child say, I don't want to go back to school anymore. And that is a serious concern. So us as a school board, we would be lacking if we were not addressing the problem or bringing the problem to the attention of administration. So.
And I'd also be happy to talk to a parent if they wanted to contact.
I mean, I think that it's important, bringing up the conversation about communication. We have been very vocal about the fact that we need to do better. We have been very vocal about the fact that it is a priority. We've been very vocal about the fact that we want transparency and we want our families to understand and know what's going on. Not just when we have incidents, but also to welcome them back into the district. And so, welcome them back. There have been a little bit of time where we could not have, big events and or, people coming in and out. So, conversations I think that we're having about safety, security, improving, our trauma responses, communication is kind of wrapped up all into that. And I appreciate you bringing it up.
Well, continue to have communications, and there are things that,
Well, and also on the other hand, I would like to address the fact that there are certain communications that are not supposed to be out there, but are being discussed in the middle school and overheard by the children. And that is another issue that needs to be addressed, that students are spreading rumors that they're hearing discussed by adults.
So I will get some more information in the near future, and then we'll have conversations, and I can talk with Rick Brown as well.
I was just gonna say, just random thought, I've been trying to think how to piece this all together, is there a longer term vision for almost like a community relations committee, something that looks at what is our outward facing appearance to the community locally, and to be honest, like outside the area. I always view what our community ends up with residents as, it's momentum. It's either moving in one direction or it's moving in another direction. I know, my kids probably have taken it worse than others, but it's, constantly losing friends and families that are moving outside the areas as their kids hit middle school and high school. And it's how do we start to improve our image so we start to improve people that are wanting to move into the community versus just the people that are already here? And how do we look at this as a long-term vision to be honest, in the big picture, it benefits us if we can start to sort of close up and we can do a better job with the kids that we have. We can start attracting families that want to set down roots here, that want to involve themselves, that want to drive things forward. And how do we move our momentum in that direction?
So I set up a meeting actually today with Aubrey, who is Mary Beth's supervisor at Capital Region BOCES, with Mary Beth and Aubrey, to talk about communication more in a different manner. We've also talked about streamlining communication between, buildings and district, and, I'll share a little bit of that with you later. But another topic on the conversation is going to be some positive imaging through video. We have a lot of things to share. I mean, as Tim mentioned earlier, preparing our students for success for tomorrow's world. So framing us in that, framing us in terms of our beliefs and commitments. And I have seen some powerful videos done by Capital Region BOCES, and definitely be open to like a communication advisory group or something in terms of that too. So that's something.
Just-
I mean, I think
Taking advantage of
Exactly.
this,
Yeah.
the upgraded sports facilities and things.
Absolutely.
Projects, like, how do we bring the community together? How do we take snippets of that while we start to bring people in and show them other things? It's how to tie it all together, and that constant big picture marketing of our districts.
Yeah, it's about making a brand.
Yeah.
When we see the swoosh, we know exactly who makes that product and we go there, right? And so how do our communities think about our schools? And that's going to be segregated into the same buckets that we see students travel in. And every bucket has its own daily experience. And we're the adults, we can push out the information that actually writes the narrative of our brand. We have to be thoughtful and intentional about it. And we have to push our BOCES partners, really push our BOCES partners, because that is new ground for them. But I assure you, experience tells me they have the tools in their toolbox to make it happen.
I might have watched some videos from somebody over here.
Right?
I mean,
You've got a good tagline.
Yeah.
We can build on that.
Bring our students to showcase our students into a committee
Yes.
like that as well. Because they're really smart and really talented. And those tools are not up here anymore. Those technology tools are here. We
Yes.
have them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's multifaceted. I think it's a good idea.
I would encourage you to, as a group, individually and then collectively in your informal conversations, ask yourself, where do you want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now? How do you want people seeing your product? And, we talk about this word vision all the time, and it's really fluffy in most people's heads. And then other people want to make it really concrete and sequential. And we have to paint that picture with a wide brush and then a very soft brush, because every constituent has their own perspectives of what goes on in the system every day. And think about, every community that I've worked in and been a part of in my life, it has basically the same bedrock values. How do you talk about your values in this community? And how does the school reflect those values? Because vision and values go together. Vision is something you want to get to, you aspire to, and it's going to be a journey, and that journey's not going to be easy. It's going to be your values that carry you there. And that's what resonates with people, right? You've talked about transparency. Last meeting, you talked about student-centered. You mentioned the term student-centered several times. I walked, I'm so proud of you. Because we're a school, we're about kids, we're about teaching and learning, and we need great adults who are enthusiastic about this role doing that for us every day. And, profound changes take place when you combine the fluffy idea of vision with a set of 3, 4, no more than 5 core values that everybody says, yeah. And you know what they are, like character and honesty and leadership and.
It's the Tiger way.
It's about the Tiger way. It's about their future, right? And.
I mean, Mr. I feel has, definitely, even since his first year here, has spoken the words branding more times than I can probably count.
Appreciating the fact that he's now bringing it down to the middle school and the elementary schools and.
Also been the one driving that. I believe in what he's doing, and I do feel like.
Absolutely.
Making an impact, but to me, the more interesting part of this conversation is the perception and how do we get that? And so bringing that conversation into what our expectations are, but also what can they be? I feel like that would be a very valuable piece of information for us to kind of consider what we're putting out and how we're putting it out and, what we can do better. So. Very good. Thank you. Anything else from the board? Not related to? Okay, does the community have any items tonight that they would like to discuss unrelated to the agenda? Okay. Oh, I already did that. Right, there we go. Okay. I'm getting lost in my own page. Sorry.
Been a long
It's
time.
been a minute. I'm a little rusty. You'll have to be patient with me. Okay, so,
Could we mention that this has been Ashley's first?
Oh, yes, welcome.
She's been with us for 4 days. The board meeting, right? So
Mention you're doing an excellent job.
welcome.
I gave her an A.
stickers all around. Yeah.
We all need them.
Okay, so dates for future meetings, January 22nd and February 12th, right here at the Cohoes Middle School Library at 6 PM. Can I get a motion to enter into executive session at 7:47 PM to discuss the superintendent's evaluation?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Can I get a roll call?
Oh, sorry. Mrs. Geller?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes.
Mrs. Gendron?
Yes.
Mrs. Paradis?
Yes.
And Mr. Giros?
Yes.
Thank you all for coming. We do not expect to return, and we will see you next time.